Hello YouTube and welcome back to our family. As you can see here and as promised, we are back to you with an update on the scaleless ball python. The aim of this video is just to give you guys a bit of information so that you can make more informed decisions on whether or not you want to get into this project in the future. So I'm not going to waffle on too much. Let's hit the intro and we'll roll the footage. I hope you all enjoy. First things first then guys, what we've got is a clip of feeding. This is a feeding that I did more recently, and you'll see from the footage, you know, feeding is how any typical scaled ball python feeds. I hope I demonstrated that in the video, but there is some video evidence there just to show you. I tried to move the rodent around before she took it so that you could see that she's tracking the heat signature. Some people are worried because they don't have the scalation on the front of their face that they can't detect heat. That's absolutely not true, and it's clear from the footage. Although they don't have the pits there which are laid out by the scalation, they clearly do still have the receptors. So yeah, still tracking heat, scent, all the mechanics of feeding and the instincts are all triggered in exactly the same way. There she is. So I'm just going to try and do a feed with this girl. See, the tub's a bit dirty there, but I always feed a dirty tub. So this girl will get clean tomorrow. So just pulled that away there. I just want you to see her tracking it with a heat sensing pits, just like any other snake would. Pits, I should say, receptors. And there she is, she's dialed in on that. Wham, and had it. These aren't your rates, that is actually a shed skin. These are your rates up here. But there she is then there, and there is the setup. You know, I keep the setup basic now. At the beginning I did do a lot more complicated things with the setup, and that was definitely an error on my part. So because of the shedding issue, you know, these scaleless snakes shed a lot more frequently than what a scaled snake would. I'm not 100% sure why that is, but when I was having troubles with the sheds, I did slow down the frequency of food, and the shedding frequency slowed right down. So sometimes she has trouble with it getting stuck around this section. You can just see the shed sort of built up around here, and then they can't get it past that thicker section of the body. Other times I just open the tub and there's that laying in the middle there. Believe it or not, if you've got the patience and the time, if you roll that out, which I have done in the past, you end up with a full shed like that. Exactly the same as a scale one, it's just obviously not got the scalation on there. So I've actually done this a few times now, so you can see there's a few sheds there from her, but 9 times out of 10 you'll just open the tub and you'll just see that there. Don't mistake it for a urate. That is a shed. So what I initially did with this snake setup is, what I would do is I'll do it exactly like this: paper towel, water dish on one side, and then I would put like a damp ball of paper towel this side on the heat, so that would create more humidity in the air. But all that was doing was just making the substrate too wet, and I was having problem after problem with the sheds, and I couldn't figure out what was happening, but the snake was shedding too soon, and then the result of that is you can see some of the scarring which is coming down the dorsal here. It's not too bad, but I'll drop some pictures of what it looked like. So I'll drop some pictures here. But when this snake, it was shedding too soon, and you could feel like a sticky substance on the skin underneath the shed, and it was basically shedding itself raw, and it was doing it every time. And then because it had these wounds, you know what ball pythons do when they have an injury is they then go into another shed cycle. So we've got this being a scaleless snake, so it sheds twice as often. It's then getting, you know, these small cosmetic wounds every time it sheds, then causing it to go into another shed. And at the time I was feeding it every week, and I was getting worried about infections, and so then I immediately just stopped with the feeding, and I went to feeding every 3 weeks, which is probably why this animal isn't as big as what it could be. But you know, I definitely had to intervene at that point. I didn't want the snake getting an infection or anything like that, being in a damp environment all the time. You know, that was definitely a possibility. So I slowed the frequency of feeding right down, and the shedding slowed right down, which surprised me actually. But because the shedding slowed right down, then it gave the snake enough time to recover, and then with each shed, the wounds just healed after that. I was given a iodine baths at one point, just to make sure that infection, there was no infection setting in. But make no mistake, if you get it wrong, these things will shed themselves raw. And all I had to do really was just keep it dry. Keep her dry, make sure she's got a water dish, and if she's properly hydrated, she will shed anyway. If they need a bit of help with that, then obviously you can provide the humidity, but do it afterwards when it's actually started shedding. I would rather the shed come off in pieces and be a little bit stuck than it come off too soon. Just another thing that I wanted to point this out. So where she had these little wounds down her back from shedding too soon, where it's healed, interestingly enough, in places it's healed with scales, which is mind-boggling. I've not found too much information online to figure out why that would be. I don't know if it's exclusive to ball pythons or if the corns do it as well, but it looks like if a scaleless snake gets a wound, when it heals, it will actually heal with some scales. Obviously, it's not fully scaled. I'm struggling to get a bit of focus on there, but you can make it out. So yeah, found that interesting. Another thing about this, I'm just going to let this snake roam about a bit. At the beginning, when it first hatched out, when it was first out the egg, my main concern was how the snake moved. I couldn't see it moving around really good, and I think because it doesn't have the belly scales, you know, motion was an issue for it. But as you can see there, as it's got a bit of weight to it, it can get a bit of traction under its body, you know, and move around just fine. This snake now is, you know, just like any other snake, just the fact that it's lacking scales. And don't make the mistake I did. Don't make special allowances for its husbandry. Just keep it the same as you would any other snake, and if anything, keep it a little bit drier. I was so worried about it shedding. My natural instinct was to keep it as humid as possible, and that obviously I very quickly learned that that wasn't the way. So here then we have a heterozygous version of the Scaleless. This one's a very clear expression, scales missing on the head there. I just wanted to get you guys to take a look at its colour. You know, this snake is het albino as well, so that's amping the colour up. But I also think that the scaleless head gene actually creates this banding, which you can see in the heterozygous animal, but then obviously in the actual scaleless you could see even more so. You know, it's even more banded, but it definitely has an impact on the pattern. I'm just going to show you this footage again, guys, voiceover style. So just now that we've had a look at the banding on the heterozygous animal, take a look at how drastically increased the banding is on the homozygous animal, so the superform scaleless. The banding is much more drastic. So the reason I'm pointing this out is simply because, you know, the scaleless head gene on its own has an influence, and quite a strong one. I didn't see it in the beginning when I first started working with it, but it's definitely there. It bands it up like a lot like the Enchi does, but is also very different to how the Enchi bands it up. It'll be interesting to see the Scaleless and the Enchi together and see just how banded that would be. I think those two genes would complement each other nicely, and you know, if you know me, I love Enchi anyway. So to summarise briefly then, I do genuinely believe that the scaleless ball python can be a successful animal in captivity. Just because I got it wrong early on, you know, doesn't mean that you need to go in and make the same mistakes. And this is that's the whole reason why I'm sharing the video, by the way. They take a little bit more care, a little bit more closer attention. So the breeders out there with the smaller collections, you know, there's no reason why you can't keep close eye on a scaleless snake if you do produce one. It's not that big a deal. It's not a huge amount of work. You just got to, you know, check on them twice as often. Make sure they're getting that shed off okay. Make sure they haven't flipped the water dish and they're too wet. And then absolutely, I think you can successfully keep them, and they are amazing animals. They're so spectacular to look at. They get a lot of people interested as well. Pretty much everyone who's been in this room since I have hatched that snake has had hands on that animal, and been absolutely wowed by it. So I'm for it. I definitely think it could be a successful project going forward. So just to summarise with it, keep it dry. Don't feed it too often if you are hitting problems. If you're hitting problems, it's very unforgiving. So the best way to sort of dial that shedding pattern back is to dial the feeding pattern back. At the beginning, that snake was shedding every 7 to 10 days. And that is also exactly the same pattern as what I was feeding it. And then as soon as I dialed the feeding back, the shedding slowed down. And I was getting, when I was feeding every 3 weeks, that snake was shedding every 22 days. So, you can slow it down, which is always good to know. I think we're going to call it there, guys. I've enjoyed bringing this one to you. So if you can, like, comment, subscribe if you haven't done already, hit that notification bell to stay notified of any content. Thank you very much for watching, guys, and I'll see you on the next one.